Hello and good afternoon to everybody out there in E-land. It's Sam here from transmitting from the STEM for All Makerspace at Subang. Today we have a special session to do with you, and first of all a very warm welcome to everybody out there. I hope you can join us today, but the most important thing about today is that we're going to be doing a special workshop on how to build geodesic domes. Now, I won't be building a full geodesic dome here with you today, but what I will be doing is to guide you in some of the processes that are necessary to learn in order to make dome building more easy and more fun for you to enjoy. And I think the main thing that we need to think about today is how we're going to use materials, what materials we're going to pick, what the size of your dome will be, how you're going to attach the materials together. I've got with me a whole stack of materials, some special useful objects for making measurements and cutting straight lines. I've got lots of things on my table. We'll have a look at those in just a moment, but I want to recommend that there's some tools and equipment that you will need for doing this today. We will go over that in just a few moments, but before anything else, I'd like just to review what a geodesic dome exactly is. If you remember from the PowerPoint that I showed during the first introduction of the competition a few days ago, we looked at geodesic domes and understood that they have a special shape and geometry to them. Let's just review that quickly now, and so you fully understand, and also for those people out there who haven't had the chance to see that video at this particular stage, I think it's important to understand fully what a geodesic dome is. And then in the second section we'll show you some websites where you can actually make measurements and calculate the size of your geodesic dome based on what we call its frequency. And then in the final session I'll be using some of the materials, and I've got plenty of materials here. By the way, I've just got one I've been cutting out here, just reaching across. That's a geodesic dome template here that I downloaded from the internet, and I'll be showing you these techniques to actually cut these templates out, how we can glue them together, but also how you can make your own special materials to make your own dome. And by example here I've got a beautiful, I suppose that'll be about close to 50 centimetre long strut that you can use for building a geodesic dome. It's made of newspaper, and I'll show you how to do that in just a short while. Here's an even stronger strut, which is the one I recommend, which is made from an A4 sheet of paper, and you can see here it's actually very, very rigid. And these are some of the techniques that perhaps would be worth considering when you do make a dome, is what sort of materials would like to use, and that's specially based on the actual size that you want to make your dome. So if you're going to make a super big dome, then obviously we'd do use sheets of newspaper like this, and in fact this one is made from a double sheet of newspaper. It's quite rigid, it's very light, very strong, but one of the wonderful things is you can make a floppy sheet of newspaper into something quite usable for your geodesic dome project. So let's have a look at those things later. I'll show you how to make those different struts, as we call them, or spars, a little bit later in the program. But for now, what I would like to do is to review the PowerPoint that I showed everybody on, I think it was Saturday last week when we introduced the competition, just to refresh your minds on exactly what a geodesic dome is. So what we'll do is now is change over to the PowerPoints, and we'll get this one up and running here. I have to put my glasses on because I'm as blind as a bat, unfortunately. Here we go. This is the quick review of the PowerPoint, as you can see in front of you here now. There it is. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to quickly go through what actually it is. I'll just move this way a bit so you can see my face still. What is a geodesic dome? In fact, geodesics have been with us in the middle of the 1900s when the first domes were built, but the idea of geodesics actually stems much earlier than that, from well over 2,000 years ago, when the Greeks and the Romans were studying mathematics, and they had a very clear idea of something called Polyhedra, which I'll tell you a bit more about as we go through the show. Anyway, let's just have a look at the first slide here, and as you will see from geodesic domes are actually made of two different types of polyhedra, and one is in fact what we call a a hexagon. I'll just see if I can get my mouse pointer over there. I'll just use my mouse pointer for the laser pointer. Let's try that one and see what happens. Laser pointer, there it is. I think you can see the laser pointer. This here is the hexagonal shape. And it's in fact made of, it has 6 sides, as you'll notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 sides here. This is known as a hexagon, and in this actual template here, you can see that the hexagons here are indicated here in yellow and red, all right? You can see the 6-sided hexagon in yellow and red there. And let's have a quick look at this one. You can see there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, that's a hexagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it has 6 different, what we call equilateral triangles in them. This is an equilateral triangle just here. You can see there it has internal angles of 60 degrees on each side. This is actually very important, as you'll see later in the show when we actually do some examples of how to make pentagons and hexagons, okay? So remember that angle there. It's going to be very useful later on. So if we want to make a hexagon, we need to actually take 6 of these triangles and put them together to make this hexagonal shape here. I'll show you that in a minute. Now the pentagon, as you've all heard before, the Pentagon is the big building in the USA where all the Secret Service people live. That's a 5-sided object, and you can see the pentagon here. Let me find one. There's a green one right there at the top there. You can see the pentagon here, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 triangles that are actually of a different shape and size to the hexagonal ones, okay? And if I show you the next slide, you can see that a pentagon is actually made up of a different angle internally altogether. Now, if I remember correctly, that should be an angle of 54 degrees on the inside there and 72 degrees at the apex of the triangle here. So you can see this is actually much different from this equilateral triangle, which has 60 degrees on all sides. This one has 72 degrees at the apex and 54 degrees at each of the base corners. Okay, so this is a very important difference to the pentagon, and just be reminded that all geodesic domes are constructed with essentially hexagons and, find the right one, and pentagons. Okay, that's a very important thing to remember. There's the pentagon just there, and there's a hexagon just there. Okay, so please be reminded that those 2 polyhedra are very important shapes for making your geodesic domes. All right, so let's move on a bit. We'll just quickly go through the slides here, what we'll just go back into the bit of the history of the geodesic dome. And a lot of people think that a man called Buckminster Fuller designed the geodesic dome. It's actually not true. It was designed by a different person altogether who came from Germany. And here he is, just here. Here's the man who was responsible for it. His name was Walter Baus. How do you pronounce that name? It's Bausfeld. Walter Bausfeld. He was an engineer, an optical engineer for the then Zeiss company, which is very famous for building, even today, the optical systems that go into some phones and cameras. There's a very important reason he wanted to do a geodesic dome is that they were going to build a planetarium. Now, anybody who's been to a planetarium here before would know that most planetariums have a completely hemispherical roof. In fact, I've got an example of that very same shape here. And as you can see in the middle there, I'll take all these, what we call these platonic solids off. I'll show you them a bit later. But as you can see here, this is in fact a geodesic dome, and it's almost a perfect hemispherical shape. Now that's a very important shape to remember, a hemisphere. That hemisphere means basically half of a sphere. Okay, now if you put 2 of these hemispheres together, you get a full spherical shape. And as you can see very clearly in the images in front of you, that this geodesic dome that was being built by Walter was in fact a hemispherical shape in which they could put the newly invented Zeiss planetarium projectors, which put beautiful fields of stars on the roof inside. So people sitting inside the dome thought they were sitting underneath the roof of a night sky, and the Zeiss projectors, which are some of the first planetarium projectors ever used, were used to project stars onto the inside of these domes. So this is in fact in 1923 when Walter Blausfeld, I think Bausfeld, that's right, Bausfeld first actually used a geodesic dome to build a structure. Now, it wasn't long afterwards that this whole idea of geodesic domes actually took hold. And but before we go through who actually popularized geodesic domes, just let's remember that the idea of geodesics and what we call platonic solids, and I'll show you a few platonic solids here. This is this one here is a beautiful shape here. These were shapes that were known by Greek philosophers and mathematicians about more than 2,000 years ago, and probably the most important one here is this one, which we call a tetrahedron. It's not actually a pyramid. If you know a pyramid has 4 sides, a tetrahedron has just 3 sides, and you can see them if I use this, rotate this a little bit around, you can see this is a tetrahedron with 3 sides. All of the angles meet at 60 degrees. It's a very important shape. It's one of the, what we call the very original platonic solids, and that was related to the philosopher Pluto. And you can see here another very important shape. This one, as you can see, is the octahedron. It has I'll just put it over here. It has 8 sides to it, and in fact it almost produces a special diamond shape, as you can see here. And I have this next one here, which is called the icosahedron here. And once again, these are all made up essentially of different shaped triangles. Okay, so this is very important. The platonic solids, as we call them. So if you put enough of these platonic solids together, you actually end up with what we call polyhedrons. And if you put enough polyhedrons together, then you end up with what's called a geodesic dome. And this is an example, a living example. Now, as a project, this has been made out of paper. It was I downloaded the template from the internet. You're welcome to do that yourself for this, because essentially what we're looking for is everybody's effort at building a geodesic dome. Whether you've done it from a template or from your own materials, it's entirely your choice. But certainly as part of this competition, an entry like this is certainly very acceptable. And you can find the templates online, and the templates look something like this. I'll just reach over and get this one for you. There it is. This is a slightly bigger one here, but I'll give you the websites for these later in the program. But this is essentially what you have is a half of a hemispherical geodesic dome, and you have to actually print 2 halves to make the entire dome. In this case, it's a bit larger than the one I showed you. Or by example, you have one here, which is the same as the one I've just shown you, which is the entire dome printed on 1 sheet of paper. So this is a little bit smaller. This will get you a dome of this size here, okay, a geodesic dome of this size here, and you can see it's a fairly detailed cutout. It took me about 2 hours to make this, I suppose, and there's some special techniques that I'll show you a little bit later in the program of how to cut these out to make your domes. And then this one is in fact 2 halves of a hemispherical dome here. It's a little bit easier to work with, and you get a dome that's much bigger in fact than the one that I showed you just now, this one here. So these are some of the options that are open to you. You can actually download these, print them out yourself. I had these printed out on 180 gram cardstock paper. It's quite stiff card, and with this you can actually make really nice domes. So that's certainly a solution that's there for you, and we are very keen to see anybody's submission, given that they've done it from the material of cardboard or paper as we specified in the competition. Okay, so moving on quickly is that we had the idea of polyhedra was around for a long time, and the great scientist Archimedes and sorry, was it Archimedes? Excuse me, I have to get the name right. It was the philosopher. Sorry, Pythagoras, I'm sorry, it wasn't Archimedes. Archimedes had a bath, didn't he? Pythagoras did the polyhedra. He experimented with polyhedra to begin with, and then it was Plato that actually came up with what we call the platonic solids, which I've talked about already, the cube, the octahedron, the icosahedron just here, and of course the all-important tetrahedron here. Okay, these are all polyhedra, and these were invented essentially over 2,000 years ago by the Greeks and then incorporated into the mathematics of geometry. So what you're doing here is actually very important work in mathematics and geometry. All right, so moving along a bit, it was only up until later in the 1940s that geodesic domes were actually brought into popularity by a gentleman named Buckminster Fuller. And the idea was Mr. Fuller is an architect and a scientist, and he actually created geodesic domes and popularized them, and then they became extensively used out throughout the world. Now, the advantage of a geodesic structure is that they're very light, they're extremely strong, and in fact I can put a lot of pressure on this. You can see it's a self-supporting structure, and I can actually push down on that quite hard and it will stay in its original structural format. It's a very, very strong structure, and not only that, it looks pretty amazing as well. As you can see with some of the buildings that have been built using geodesic structures, here are some of the most amazing ones. The one on the left is a horticultural garden that sits under a beautiful geodesic dome structure, and the one on the right, I've even seen myself, I've stood next to this one. It's the Cité de Sciences, incredible planetarium theatre there, made of highly polished tetrahedra, hexagons and pentagons, absolutely fantastic. So it's a design that's been used in popular architectural buildings all over the world in many different situations, and it's efficient, it's strong, and it looks amazing. So it's been really very important design structure for decades now, since Buckminster Fuller first popularised them in the 40s. Okay, so here's some important details that we're going to get into now, and this is really where you have to start thinking about what is a geodesic dome and how am I going to build one. First of all, geodesic domes come in different frequencies. When I say frequency, it's the number of times something happens, and in the case of a geodesic dome, it's the number of different sized triangles that we have to use to make up the dome. Now, when we're making a dome, a very simple geodesic dome is just simply one equilateral triangle that makes up the entire dome. Now, this is called a one frequency dome. The one that we usually make, and this is in this case, this dome here is what we call a two frequency dome. It's probably the one I'd recommend that uses two different types of triangles of different sizes, and I'll show you how to calculate those shortly. And then you have the three frequency and four frequency domes. I don't recommend you go to 3 and 4 frequencies. You're welcome to do so if you want, but it really gets quite complicated and the build gets quite challenging. So for today, we're just going to say it may be better to focus on a 2 frequency dome, which requires you to make triangles of just 2 different sizes, okay, to make the actual dome itself. All right, so moving along, just to finish this up quickly, I'm just going to jump to the next slide. Here it is here, and you'll hear me making some references to certain parts of the dome today, and you can see the dome is made up of what we call struts or spars here. I like to call these spars, and you can see this spars that have been integrated into the image on the left-hand side here. And if you look carefully, you can also see where there's hexagons and pentagons. Can you see the hexagon here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 sides there. And where is the pentagon? Where is the pentagon? That's another question that you can see here. And if you look carefully, you can actually see the pentagon is right here. It actually makes up part of the hexagon. There's a pentagon here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 sides. So you can see how the 2 polyhedra, hexagons and pentagons, are actually interlocked together to make up a single dome. It's very important you remember that these are 2 different types of triangles, and we actually make the different triangles by using different lengths of spar. That's what we're going to calculate in just a few moments on the websites that I'm going to show you. So this is a very important thing to remember. We have to make a 2 frequency dome. That means you have to make 2 lengths of spars. In this particular case, I made this one out of A4 paper. You'll be doing that too. It's a very easy way to make spars. And we roll the paper onto a dowel like this, a wooden dowel. I'll show you how to do that in just a few moments. Okay, so moving along, just to finish up the presentation quickly, you can see Mr. Buckminster had a molecule named after him. I'd like to have a molecule, a Samuel. What would you call a molecule named after me? A Samuel. No, Bucky Fuller. This is called the Buckminster Fuller, or Buckyball as it was known. It's actually a known carbon molecule. And as you can see, it has a very similar shape to a geodesic dome. And in fact, if you answer the question for me down here, what famous game is played with an object that looks exactly like a buckyball? I hope you can answer that question because you all know the game, I guarantee it. All right, just to finish up today with this one is that we want to think about some of the elements of building a geodesic dome. Oops, I jumped a slide there. I will leave this video on YouTube so you can review it later on, but here are some of the points that I'd like you to consider if you're doing a project, and more to the point, when we finish your project, the judges will be looking for some of your work. And what I do encourage everybody to do is to try to make sure you record your work, please. So if you're taking photographs with a hand phone, or taking a video sequence, or at least making some effort to record your work, that really helps us too, because you'll be showing us your dome as a e-learning or electronic image process, and we would love to see the work you're doing, and not just what the finished product is, how you got to the finished product in the first place. Okay, we move on. I think that's enough on domes for the moment. I'm just going to turn the PowerPoint off now, and then what you can see here is just a minute, I'll just exit out of the PowerPoint. There it is. Okay, I'll get back to my corner here. What I'd like to do now is just to show you some of the technical sides of how to build domes, and what we need to understand. I've lost my mouse, has disappeared in there somewhere. What we need to understand, so I'm going to have to reboot my mouse, it's disappeared from my computer. Hopefully that's going to work. Okay, I'm sorry, I've lost my mouse, it's disappeared altogether. Help? I'll try it from here. It's, unfortunately, my mouse has disappeared from the screen, so it's going to make it very difficult for me to continue the program. Oh, here it is. We got it back. It reappeared just in the nick of time. Okay, all right. So what we're going to do now is just to go through some of the actual elements of building a dome, and what I'd like to suggest to you is using some of these special websites here. Okay, so what we'll do now is it'll come up on screen in just a few moments, I think. Would you like to give me a hand there just to see if we can make sure it appears? There it is. Aha, right, okay, it's off screen. Yeah, I'll just and that's probably where my mouse was, wasn't it? It was on the extended screen, wasn't it? Okay, there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is can we, yeah, okay, that's going to be interesting. Okay, I'll just see if I can full screen it. Hang on, is that on there now? Oh, I missed. Oops. Hang on, just give us a few moments here and we'll get, can you just full screen that for me? No. I've got my trusty studio people here. There seems to be a little bit of a delay in... To the right. Say again, sorry?
What? Okay, no.
Oh, not that one. There seems to be a bit of delay in the mouse function, so please just stand by here, be patient, and we will have this up and running as soon as possible. Okay, yep, oh. Yes, perfect, thank you. All right, here we go. It's great to have some studio technicians to help you when you run into a few problems like that. The show moves on. Okay, there's some really great sites here. I'd like you to have a look at how these sites, because they will be important for you to understand how to build your geodesic dome. And the first one is essentially an overview of how to build, and it's called Domerama. I think it's from memory, it's domerama.com. Is that what's written up there? Domerama.com. We'll leave a list of these sites for you. And as you can see, this site has lots and lots of details. And the other question is, how am I going to be able to scroll down this site at all? Just can you see the scroll bar there by any chance? Oh, it's interesting. We kind of lost control of the mouse a little bit, but not to worry. Domerama.com has got lots of useful information on it. And the other site that I'm hoping to, here it is just up here, this one here, which is probably the more important of the two sites. I'm just going to pop that one up there. Unfortunately, we've lost control of the mouse, unfortunately.
Okay.
Oh, there it is here. Okay, this is the really the most important site of all. It's called Desert Domes, and on this site you have the capability to actually make measurements of the dome and decide how big the actual spars are going to be to construct your dome. Okay, it's quite a big process. Normally, to make these sort of things, we need to have about over 80 of these spars made. So it's a good idea to have a team to work with, because when you actually start building, it really becomes a bit of a process of producing the materials necessary as quickly as possible. So I like to have a team of friends to do it with me. And we're just trying to get back to a point where we can share screens more. Have we got it now? Okay.
Yes, I duplicate the screen.
Okay, so we duplicated the screen, and let me see if we can come back to it again. So we're having a few little, oh, that's much better now. Haha, yeah, okay, now I've got it, and I can see everything. There it is, and my mouse is even there as well. Okay, so slight technical hitch, please forgive us. We're back into action now, and we can see what's going on at real time as well. Okay, so let's just go down there. You can see, essentially it gives you a calculator. It says a dome calculator here, and this is very important for you to get going with your domes. And what we're going to build is a 2V dome. Okay, so we're going to click on the 2V dome indicator. As I say, we'll share these, and if you look down here, it has a very important diagram here which will get you started in making the essential measurements that you need to get your spar lengths correct. Now, to make a 2 frequency dome, you'll need to make spars like this of a certain length and spars like this of a slightly shorter length. Okay, and let's calculate that right now, and I'll show you how to do the calculation on screen here. So what you really want to do is to understand what the strut length is going to be. Okay, so we're just going to scroll down here a bit further. And as you can see, this is going to be, don't include units here. For example, if you want to build a dome that's 10 by 6 high, enter 10.5. Okay, so it gives you some very simple outlines here. It also gives you how to make a 2V newspaper dome down the bottom there, you can see there, and an assembly diagram. So let's just click on those links. So, oops, site can't be reached. Okay, that's always happens during these sessions. And we'll just have a look at the assembly diagram, which I'm pretty sure is correct there. So you can see now you have the red spars that make up the pentagons, and then the blue spars that make up the hexagons and the pentagons indicated in this diagram. It's a very important diagram to work with, because this is the basic build overview of your dome. Now, just going back to the page again, and if we go and scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see here there's actually a very good way to do what we call dome calculator. Okay. And we'll just click on the dome calculator and dome formulas. There it is. You can see here now, using these pages here, you can see they've given you various indicators of how to get the measurements correct for your dome. And of course, what we're looking at here is the 2V dome here, or the 2 frequency dome, which I'm just outlining in this particular section here. So what I need you to do is to look at this site, and there are in fact very good guidelines in this particular, I'll just get rid of the advertisement down there, very good guidelines in this site of how to actually make the strut lengths. So what if we go to the reverse dome calculator, which is what I like to use because it's a little bit easier, and we'll just go to 2V here, okay, and then we go down here, and we can actually add some lengths into here. So by the example, this one is a length of about 40 centimeters. Let's just see what happens if we add 40 centimeters here, okay, and then this one here, we put in say 50, like this. And then, beg my pardon, I've done it the wrong way around, okay. We want the radius of the dome. So say you want a dome that's a radius of, say, 0.5 meter, 500 millimeters, 500, there we go, a half-meter dome here, and then we do the, we enter that in there, and then, hang on, it's supposed to calculate it out, but it didn't do it, unfortunately. Okay, I'll come back to that in just a moment. Oh, here it is, submit, here we go, okay. Submit, there we go. Strut length, and we'll put a strut length of 50 centimeters here. Sorry, it's just up here. There it is here. Okay, finally we've got it. I'm sorry about that. You can see. Now, the first thing you do is put the strut length in. So we've got a 50 centimeter strut here, and then it calculates everything that you need to do to make up the dome here. So I'm sorry, I left it out at the top of the dome here. It says enter the strut length. This is about 50 centimeters long, and now you can see it's calculated all the components that you'll need. Okay, so here it is, the A component and the B component, which is a little bit shorter. It's 44.215 centimeters, but as you can see, these B components are a little bit shorter than the A components along here, and what we need to know is that how many of them do you need altogether, and it tells you exactly here. You'll need 35 of the long ones and 30 of the slightly shorter ones. Okay, so this is how you can calculate what you need to do to make your struts the right length to make your 2V or 2 frequency dome. And just let's go through that one more time again so we know what the situation is. And it even tells you the radius that's going to be. It's going to be about 80 centimeters across. So it's actually quite a sizable dome. And if you look at 80 centimeters, it's actually going to be something around about that size there. So it's quite a reasonable size. And you can play with the settings here if you want a slightly larger dome. Let's just put in 60 centimeters by chance. So we put 60 centimeters, we submit, and then you can see the A struts will be 60 centimeters long, and the B struts will be a bit shorter at 53 centimeters, which is going to be a little bit more difficult to build. But if you're building your dome out of newspaper, then sure, you can think about the slightly larger values that we have. If you're going to make a smaller dome like the one I showed you earlier on, then obviously you can use smaller materials like A3 paper here. So the point now is that you can see very much from this website how you can actually calculate the lengths of the materials that you require, the A struts and the B struts, and what size they need to be. So the next thing we'll be doing is actually measuring these to find out how much we need to snip them off each end to make up the correct length, and I'll show you that in just a short while. Okay, so let's just go through that one more time. I want to be, we'll enter the strut length, which is going to be 50. Well, let's just say 50, I think is good to start with. Oh, that's 650, that's going to be a huge dome. 50, submit, and here it is down the bottom here. We have our length of 50. Now, for me to measure that, I'm going to need a ruler, okay, and you really will need a rule to do this, because without the rule you can't measure the strut lengths properly, and in fact what I've got here is a strut length that's going to be, well, this is 30 centimeters long, so perhaps it would be better for us to work with this, because what I'm going to do now is to show you actually how to make these struts with simple sheets of A4 paper. Okay, let's go into overhead screen now and have a look at what we need to use for our dome structure. Now here I have a wooden dowel. I guess this wooden dowel is about let's measure its diameter. Hang on, I'll just get my ruler. Where did I put my ruler just now? Thank you very much. It's hiding under there. Okay, and this is a dowel. It's it's telling me it's about 8 millimeters in diameter, which is good. You can have a look around the house. You can even use a pencil to roll on. It's a bit more difficult. I've got a nice long what you call bubble tea straw here, which could be used as well. You have to look around the house, but anything that's less than about 8 millimeters in diameter is going to be a little bit difficult to use. So you do have to have a look around. You can normally pick up dowel, which is called dowel, from the local DIY shop. They've got it down there usually. You have to sort of have a look around to see if you can find a piece of dowel and look at this to see. Basically, it's about 8 millimeters across, just a little bit less than a centimeter across. You can use different sizes, but this is generally speaking a good size to start with. And you will need some paper, so I'm going to get a sheet of paper over here, and we'll show you how to roll your first, here is my sheet of paper just here, how to roll your first strut. I'm just going to get some paper down here. Okay, let's go to the overhead camera and see how we can do this. Okay, the best way to do this is just a standard sheet of A3 paper. Now, I do recommend that you use 80-gram paper. It's a little bit more rigid than the 70-gram paper, which I think is a little bit too light. But if you haven't got 80-gram paper, it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, we're going to turn a loose sheet of paper into a rigid structure. And to do that, we need to actually roll it up. Okay, so it's very simple for me to do this. And what we're going to do is to tuck this over the edge of the dowel here, and I'll just tuck that corner. And what I actually have to do is more or less aim this at the top corner here. So as you can see, I'm just adjusting the angle a little bit on the dowel here so that the corner of the paper, as you can see between my fingers, is more or less aiming up towards the top end of the paper. It's almost like a gun sight. You can see it's pointing straight towards the top there. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit out. It's not going to make a huge difference at the end of the day. And what I'm going to do is not rolling too tightly, is I'm just going to roll this along the table here, along the table like that, and you can see it's coming out to quite a nice looking strut. And then there's a few different ways that we can attach this together. Now, what I normally do is prepare with a masking tape, or you can use double-sided tape. All right, I'd suggest one of these, or sellotape is possible as well, or we call it cellophane tape, the clear stuff. But in this particular instance, I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided carpet tape. It's very easy. This is called masking tape. It's a little bit different. And I'm going to take a small piece off like this, and I'm going to put it across the end of the strut of the paper, like that. And then I'll trim it off with a pair of scissors. And you can just rip the end of it there. And what you have to do is peel off the backing of the double-sided tape. I'm going to do a couple of these in different ways, okay, and then just literally roll it on to the rest of the, and then when you've done that, you can actually pull this straight off the doweling here, and there you have what I've cut is a pretty decent and pretty strong strut. There's nothing that cannot. I'm actually putting quite a lot of pressure on that, and it actually feels very, very solid. And this strut looks to me to be around about just over 30 centimeters long. So that's a good size for us to start with. And what we'll do in a moment is go back to our desert domes and calculate how many of these we'll need to make a proper geodesic dome. So that's one technique. I'm going to show you another one just quickly. Okay, just here is another sheet of paper here. I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to roll it onto the dowel, and we're just going to use a slightly different technique to make shorter struts. Here it is here. I'm just going to roll it with the paper side up so we get a nice blank side. But you can actually roll the strut just exactly like this if you want, straight across. And you just have to tuck the bottom end in underneath the dowel. It takes a little bit of practice to do that, but once you get it in, you just roll it up gently like this. And this makes a very, very strong strut, but that, once again, don't forget, it'll make a smaller dome in the long run. So we're going to put a bit of double-sided tape across the bottom there. And this is where having a friend around can be quite handy, because you get one of your friends to hold it in place while you stick the tape on. We'll trim the end off here. Right, and then take the double backing off. Sometimes that's a little bit difficult too. That's why I don't cut my nails too short. You need that thumbnail to get your to get the backing off, and then we'll just roll it up gently onto the dowel. And once again, that slips off. Now that's a super strong strut, that one. It's in fact probably really good for making you know, like a very strong structure. But this one, don't forget, is only, we have a distance of just over 21 centimeters here, so that gives you what we've described as a slightly smaller dome dimension for your A spars. So you can see here, Two ways of making spars. Now there's one more way. If you want to go to a very large dome, and don't forget, you can also use masking tape to stick the ends off. That's quite simple too. If you haven't got double-sided tape, sellotape or masking tape is just as good. You can put a little piece of tape over the end of the corner there and just wrap it around the spar, and that does the trick just as well as the double-sided tape. I like double-sided tape because it's a little bit more sticky and makes a better adhesion in the long run. Okay, so let's just have a look. If we want to make a big spar, if you want to make a big dome out of what we use is newspaper, okay, and you can do that. I'm going to show you now. This is actually 2 sheets of newspaper rolled up to make a spar that's probably close to 30, well, that's getting close to 50 centimeters long, which is what we're looking at in the original design constructions we're doing. It's actually quite strong. Not as strong as the paper, but certainly if you're thinking of a larger dome project, then certainly newspaper is your weapon of choice. And what I'd suggest is that we'll look at doing a newspaper spar right now, so at least you can understand that if you have a larger project you'd like to do. Now I'm talking about domes that are probably going to end up around about 1.5 meters tall if you're using this type of dimension in your structure. It's going to make quite a large dome at the end of the day, and I should say that it'd be a lot of fun to see some domes that were a little bit bigger rather than little tabletop ones I've made here. We'd love to see some full-size domes, and we do recommend newspaper. It's a very easy way to do it. So just quickly now, I'm going to show you how to make a newspaper spar. I need to get today's news. Where's today's newspaper? There it is, just over the back here. Today's news is old news, is it not? We're going to turn the news into geometry, which is what I love. I like geometry. There we go, some masked people there. They didn't know they're going to be turned into parts of a dome, did they? Okay, so what I'm going to do is take 2 sheets. You can use more if you want to, but this is a standard size newspaper here. And I'm going to take 2 sheets and lay them out flat on my work table. And it's always good to have a good place to work with as well. I always like to see that there's a good clear area to work with. And for this I've used actually a piece of standard PVC tubing. This one here is a very stock standard. It's over the top there. I'll just give you that. That's all right, that's good, that's good. You can see it just there. It's from this one, it's a very standard electrical tube. It's about 2 centimeters in diameter. You can get it's all over the place. You can find bits of pieces lying around building sites, so you can buy a length of it from your local DIY shop. It's called PVC, which stands for polyvinyl chloride. It's used often in construction and water distribution, and it's cheap as chips. You don't have to buy, a piece like this will probably cost you no more than 4 or 5 ringgit, I'd say. Okay, so what we're going to do is lay this across the newspaper. We're going to do a similar thing again, but before I do so this time, I'm going to actually use a different adhesive to stick this down. I'm going to use masking tape now, and what I like to do is just to prepare a little piece beforehand, because it's easier for me to have a little piece ready to go just there when I get to the end of my rolling. And it's very much the similar situation today as before, is that I aim this corner at the opposite corner, and I can just sort of see the apex of this pointing towards the tip of the paper on the other side. It's a little bit out of camera, don't worry about that. And then I tuck it in, and I just very easily roll it up. Now, don't roll it too tightly onto the tube. It can get a little bit stuck, but what we're going to do is roll, and then you come to the end, and just the last bit over the top here, and it's very easy to use your pre-cut piece of masking tape, or sellotape for that matter, and put it over the end, and hey presto, you've got, now that's quite tight, that is, it's a little bit hard to pull off, but as you can see here, if we go back to the camera and pull it off, and hey presto, you've got a beautiful strut that's going to be around about 60 centimeters long, and you can see here that's 30 into the middle there, 30 to the middle, I'll just put my finger on it, and about 30 to the other side, just a little bit less than 30. So you could very easily build a 50 centimeter strut using the newspaper technique. But don't forget, the newspaper isn't as strong as the paper, but it does allow you to build a larger dome in the long run. So let's just go back to our dome calculator, because this is really the secret of how to do this. One more time, back to the dome calculator, is on the page here. Let's have a look. We've got the paper struts, the paper struts on the table and the dome calculator, if you could just get that up please, on the website. Oh, it is there. Thank you very much. The dome calculator. Now let's have a look at this strut here is 30 centimeters. Its useful length is 30 centimeters. Okay, we can see that there, the 30 centimeters. Now I can use the dome calculator because this will be the maximum length I can make my struts, 30 centimeters. So the A struts will be 30 centimeters, the B struts will be a little bit shorter. Let's find out how long they were going to be. So what I'm going to put in here is enter the strut length. We're going to make that 30, and then we're going to put the form submit, and you'll see straight away down below, you can see that the length of the A struts here, the big ones across the inside of that triangle there, are going to be 30 centimeters long, and the B struts here, these ones, will be 26.5 centimeters long, a little bit shorter. Okay, somebody's just given me a longer ruler, thank you very much, but that's a good idea. All right, so 26.5, where is that? So now you can make all of these struts the same size, but you have to cut them to length afterwards. So let's have a look at 26.5. I'm just going to get my pencil and mark it on the, can I just get the overhead camera going again please? So we've got, there it is here, and you can see I've got it marked out here. Is that upside down for people out there in TV land? There it is, 26.5. So you can see that's 26.5 right there, okay? So I'm going to add the spar and to 26.5 at this side. And I'm going to just cut a little bit off the end here, just to square off the end there, okay? All right, let's snip that to length. How am I going for time, by the way, fellas? And snip that to length. Okay, all right. And there it is. There's your B strut, like this. Okay, all right. And then this is going to be the A strut here, and you can see now they're two of different sizes. So this one is a 30 centimeter long one. You can see it's 30 centimeters long there. That's the A strut, and then the B strut is here. Okay, that's a very important length to manage. So you can see it's exactly 26.5 centimeters long. Now what you can do is you need to be able to connect these together, and the best way to do that, I think, is just to flatten the ends out a little bit. And what we can actually make, which is what I want to show you now, is hexagonal and pentagonal hubs, which allow you to stick these struts together at their specific angles. So essentially what you need to do at the end of the day is to be able to attach these struts together to make up the hexagonal and pentagonal shapes. And to do that, I'll just finish the program today by showing you a little bit about hexagons and pentagons and how to make them. All right, here it is once we go to the overhead sheet again. And what I like to use is templates. And templates essentially are pieces of thicker cardboard that you cut out beforehand, and using these pieces of cardboard, it's possible to make up the hexagons and the pentagons that you will need as hub templates for your structures. And when I say hub templates, it's where all of the points join together. So when you actually build your domes, you will need to actually use these templates to give you a guideline as to where to put the different struts as you're making the dome. Okay, it's very important. It's a very important thing to be able to do. So what I've done here is I've got a fresh sheet of paper, and I've made two triangles here. One of them's the equilateral triangle, and the other one is a slightly larger what we call it, isosceles triangle just here. Okay, so this is the one here, the equilateral triangle. And just to give you an idea, as we went back to the slides before, you remember that the angle on this one is about 54 degrees on the inside angle here, 54 degrees. I'll show you how to do that. This one is actually 60 degrees on all corners. Okay, 60 degrees. So this corner here is 60 degrees, like this. This corner is 60 degrees, this corner is 60 degrees, and the easiest way to make up a hexagonal hub is to actually use a template like this, and you place it on the paper. And I like to see if I can minimize my use of materials as well. So I'll start at the bottom of this piece of paper here and quite simply trace around the edge of this piece of cardboard here. I made this a little bit earlier on. I'm going to show you quickly at the end of the program how to do this. So you can see the first triangle. Now we need 6 of these. So all you do is place that next to that. And you can see here, that's one across here, one across here. And you only need to put 2 lines, but it's very important to hold them. I slipped a little bit with that one, but you do have to manage these lines very precisely. And then I'm going to put that one next there, like that. Just make sure it's lined up properly. And as I say, engineering is a precise art, so just be careful to see how you are making your template. And this one here, across there like that. And the next one up, like this. The pentagon's a little bit more difficult to make, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. This is very easy because it's called an equilateral triangle. It's got the same angle on all sides. Okay, and we put this one in here like that. And as you can see there, you've got a perfectly formed hexagon, and you've got enough room to put at least 2 more onto this. And what you would do is then cut this out. I'll just cut this out quickly for you. Like that. Like that. And I might add that it'd be a good idea to use 120-gram cardstock for this. It makes it a little bit easier. The paper is okay as well, but if you've got slightly heavier paper, then that makes it easier. And then you can see you've got a perfect hexagon. And you can use these hexagons to line up all of your spars in the right angle, okay? And what I generally do is very simply is that you can make these a bit smaller. I've made this one a bit bigger today so you can see what goes on. But the easiest way to do this is that you put the hexagon down here. You'll have 6 of these at 30 centimeters. And then what I do is very simply put double-sided tape. Where's my thin double-sided tape? I put double-sided tape onto the actual hub is what I call it. Okay, I'll snip that off, make an adjustment there, and then peel off the backing. Okay, and then very simply you can stick your spar right over the top there, like that, and that's the beginning of your first hexagonal pattern for the making of the geodesic dome. Okay, so what you'd be doing now is having another 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of these built up to make up your full hexagonal shapes for the dome. And then you connect these together to make up the hexagons and pentagons for the whole and complete dome. Now, the last thing I want to show you today is how to make a pentagon. And that's going to be a little bit more difficult because, as you know, the angle is a little bit different. This is 60 degrees each corner. This one's 60 degrees on each corner. Very simple to make, but to actually do a pentagon is a little bit more difficult, and for that we need what we call a protractor. And there it is here. For those of you who have done some geometry at school, a protractor is actually a very easy object to use if you know what to do correctly. But what we're going to do today is to actually calculate what angles we need for a pentagon. So if you can see here today, I'm just going to put the protractor on, well actually we'll do it around this way, I think it's easy for you because you can see the direction that I have too here. And I'm going to measure off 54 degrees, correct? It's one of the angles that we had was 54. Okay, so I'm just going to put a pencil mark near, that's 45 and 54. We want to make this the correct angle down the bottom here. So 54 degrees is just there. Okay, and double 54, what's double 54? That'll be 108, won't it? Is that right? No, sorry, 54. Sorry, you have to do 54, and another 54 degrees will be 108. Is that correct? 108 is just going to be somewhere over here. That's right. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's right. So let me just check that from this angle here. 54. I just want to make sure I can do this correctly because I don't want to make a mistake with the 54 will be over here. Just a minute. Now you have to make sure you make a center point on your protractor as well, so don't forget to put that in as well. You have to be able to mark, unfortunately this one hasn't got a hole in it, which makes it a little bit difficult for me to do. So I'll just mark that center point in there. okay, and then add another 54. There's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 4 is going to be over here. That's the angle there. And then we're just going to count those two to the center like this. All right, like that. And this one's going to be like this. So I have to just check that center angle there. That's right, 54. And then okay, over here, there we go, that one there. And then that we draw this one in here, okay? And that is the angle that we have to work with for the pentagon. I'm going to use a steel ruler now to actually cut this. Now, when you're using knives, please be careful. Remember not to cut yourself with a knife, and especially not to have a knife cut where your finger or bits of your body are in front of a knife. And then we're going to cut that straight across. I'll do a couple of cuts there, and same on this side. And there you have the template to make the pentagon. Okay, let's give it a try, see what happens. Do this quickly. Are we going well for time? We're doing okay. How many minutes have we got left? Are we good? Show me a timing, please. Okay, let's have a look, see if we can make a pentagon now. And you can see this is a slightly different shape. This one, it's a slightly broader triangle, and it should give us a pentagonal shape in the long run. So let's quickly run around here now. And we go one down here, across like that, across like that. I see, right, okay, that's why somebody's putting marker. That's a good idea, isn't it? Okay, there we go. That's a good point. There we go. Like that. And one round here like that. So you just, I used a pencil just then, but obviously for the camera here we need a marker, which is a good idea, okay. Like this, looks like it's going to be all right there. And then this one on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last one across here, like that, which is the 5th. The pentagon shape there. So there you can see the pentagon shape on the base of the paper here. Once again, we can cut that out. And then you have also your template, not only for a hexagon, but a pentagon at the same time. So I might just go over that the hexagon again so you can see it clearly. There it is there. Okay, there's a pentagon there, and then the hexagon, as you can see here. Let me just trace over this one so you can see it one more time, because apparently the pencil wasn't visible. So thank you for the studio assistants for helping with that. And we'll just do this one more time so you can see it clearly. I'll mark it out with the text, the pen marker here, just so everybody can see more clearly what we're doing. This is using the equilateral triangle with angles of 60 degrees. Okay, here we go, one more here. Once you get that first one done, the rest is easier. Just you see I started with a pentagon on the other side. Just be a little bit careful how you cut this down. And the most important thing to remember with this is that you keep the errors to a minimum, because as you're building the dome, you'll find that if you've made any small errors to begin with, those errors will get a little bit bigger as you finish building the dome. So please be as precise as you can with your measurements and your angles. And if you have that precision in this project, then not only will you make a terrific dome, but you might almost win some money as well. So you can see very clearly there, that's the hexagon. I can cut the hexagon out now. And these give me the templates that I need to make up the pentagonal and hexagonal components of my geodesic dome. Now you can make these a bit smaller if you're making a smaller dome, then you can use smaller templates. If you're making a larger dome, then you use larger templates. But as you can see, the basic technique here is to use your cardboard templates to set up the hubs that you'll need for building your domes. Okay, so you've got a bit of information there now, but that's essentially the most important part, is you have to have these guidelines. And as you can see, if you're building a dome and you're sticking your spars together, you have to be able to work on a guideline to actually stick the spars at the right angle, because if the spars don't come in at the right angle, then you'll find the rest of the dome very, very difficult to build. So what I'm going to do now is I think we'll finish with just a quick build video of a dome. Let's have a quick look at the one we saw before. Just let's go back to the Desert Domes page. And once again, don't forget, we will send you the details and URLs to do this, but please remember that you have to enter your spar length here, and in this case we put 30. Once you've entered that, you hit the form submit, and once the form submit's gone in there, it'll tell you what lengths of A and B struts you need to make the dome possible, okay? And if you have a look at the assembly diagram, you'll always get this assembly diagram here, which is a good guideline to how to build the dome. And as you can see here, there's the hexagonal sections here, which have got the A lengths, which are the longer pieces, and then you can see the B lengths, which are the shorter pieces. And going back to the actual lengths here, you can see that for your dome you'll need 35 of the A lengths, okay, and just oh sorry, this is the A length just here, the longer one, and only 30 of the B lengths, which are, sorry, just go over this way, which are a little bit shorter, okay? So please remember, these are critical things that you have to incorporate if you're going to build a dome. We have to finish there now. I think we've just got enough time now to play the video. Just let's do that quickly. We'll go back to my PowerPoint, because it is a good video and you can see very clearly how this guy does it. We'll give it a, can we roll it just like that, I think? Okay, here we go. And as you can see, he's built all of his spars to begin with, and then he's laid himself out a workspace. He's used the actual spars and laid them on the table to begin with to give him the full diameter of his dome, and then he puts in the secondary pieces using the A and B lengths accordingly. And I think he's mostly sticking these together with just sticky tape at the joining points, but I do recommend to look at this as a system where all of the spars come together to try and do something like this, because it does make the dome building a little bit easier, okay? So he's got all the pieces here. This is a guy working by himself, but what I do recommend is that you try to find a friend or a few friends to work with, because it makes it not only more enjoyable, but much, much easier when you're doing these somewhat complicated assembly sections, okay? I want to wish everybody well. Thank you for joining today. If you have a good idea of what to do, then please feel free to experiment. It doesn't matter if you don't get it right first time, but the important thing to do is you've got to start from somewhere, and please use the materials you have around you. I'm sure in your household you can find most of the things that I was showing you today. And also I think that the idea of building domes, it might not happen correctly first time, but it's persistence that pays off, and this is what engineers are very good at, is persistence, because our saying in engineering is that there are no problems, only solutions. And just remember that when you're building this, is that everything comes out with a solution if you persist. So we wish you well with your dome construction projects. We will post the websites that we've been showing you today on the I think on the forum that they have here for this. I think there is a description of that. So please remember that. But there was Desert Domes. It's pretty easy to Google. It's got the calculator in there. Remember, keep it simple. Build a 2V dome. If you feel like you can take it further, make it a 3V or 4V dome, but be careful about the complexity. Thank you very much for joining today. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing your finished projects and the possibility of having you win some prize money. Yes, that would be good, wouldn't it? I could do with some cash too. Do I get paid for this? I don't think so. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day now. Very nice to have you with us, and good luck with your projects.